for those of you who were with us yesterday evening, I tried to take a few pictures of the new leopard we saw yesterday. Unfortunately, my skills are such that they were all slightly disastrous. So I have one of the cats sleeping, but that's all. So no good ones of Cheetah. We will have to go and find her again. We might be lucky and find her again fairly soon. That would be very nice. Shall
we have a look?
At the photograph?
Yeah.
No. Oh. Absolutely no chance. There are a whole lot of bushes in the way. No, really wouldn't be a good idea to have a look at her.
What's
okay.
In your hand, James?
My camera's in my hand, Andre. See?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the battery's run out, so we can't have a look at it. Hello, D-Hugs. You're wondering about Djuma and quarantine. They would be, what would they be? They would be cousins of some sort to Sindile. They are now pushing 4 years old, and you want to know if I think they would have mated yet, even though they're not territorial. I don't, and I'll tell you why. A, because they're not territorial, and therefore they need to be very careful of advertising their presence. B, I don't think they would have mated simply because we would have heard about it. You know how long the mating takes. You know how long, sort of 5 days of continuous mating. Chandra, that's the flat battery. Idiot. Anyway, but because there's so much activity in the Sabi Sands, D-Hugs, I think what you'll find is that if they had been mating, it's almost certain somebody would have seen or certainly heard about it. So no. Djuma, probably a greater chance than quarantine because he is lurking down on the river where there's an empty territory and he might set himself up there. Still quite young, hey? 4 years is under 4 years, 3.5 to 4 years is young for a male leopard to be taking in territory. It would normally be around 5. It's not impossible, so let's see what happens there, but I don't think they've mated yet. I think we're going to leave this fellow to lie on his termite mound, and we might come back this afternoon, maybe at the end of the drive, and see if he isn't still here. But no one else is coming here, so we're going to move on from here. Okay. Anybody object? Oh, good. Okay. Here we go. We'll just have one last look at him. I might come back. It has been very nice to spend a couple of hours in his great presence, has it not, Chandra? Yes. All right. It's getting quite warm. I might have to take my jacket off. Okay. He's now not even reacting at all to the vehicle. Okay. While we move away, let's go back to Jamie. I think those lions are still on the move, possibly towards Buffelshoek Dam. Let's go and find out.
Amber is definitely not on the move just yet. She's decided to do something similar to the male lion and settle down in the sun and enjoy herself. Now there are lions towards Buffelshoek. The male lion that we were with earlier, I can hear him calling now from Cheetah, so he's crossed south over our boundary. I wonder whether she wasn't thinking about following him before she got terribly distracted by that racing honey badger, and I do apologize for that. It was so quick that we just didn't manage to get it on camera. It was incredible to see, but it just happened far too fast. There were apparently 2 of them. I only saw one. Dave, you only saw one. Yeah. And a very fleeting glimpse of a streaking black and white shape. We were talking a little bit about Amber Eyes' potential pregnancy, and of course that brings us back to James's question about placental mammals, and of course lions are fully placental mammals, just like human beings, just with a slightly shorter gestation period. I say slightly shorter, about a third of that of a human being. So James has asked, what are the other 2? And I used to know the official terminology. I know exactly what he's referring to. He is, of course, talking about things like the platypus that famously lays eggs, because Australia is host to a whole number of bizarre, strange, and interesting creatures. Unlike our lion. Imagine if lions laid eggs. Sorry, that was a weird thought that just came into my head. Can you imagine that? Imagine if lions laid eggs, finding a batch of lion eggs. They'd have to be tawny and spotted in colour and quite anyway. It was a strange path to go down. And then, of course, there's the animals like the kangaroos, the true marsupials. Now, I'm trying to remember, back in the day, casting my mind back to school biology lessons, what the official terminology is for them. There's inter something. I might need your help, all of you at home, for the official terminology. So we've got the placental mammals, and then the other two are the ones that lay eggs, and then the underdeveloped, what is the word? So essentially altricial babies, like joeys of kangaroos, that are essentially born after a very, very brief gestation period. So little lions, even when they pop out, their eyes are closed, their ears are closed, and they're pretty helpless, but not nearly as helpless as little naked kangaroo babies, or echidna babies, or whatever else we have, or koala babies. They, of course, make that journey up to their mother's pouch when they are just the tiniest, only a couple of inches long in the case of kangaroos, and only a couple of grams, small, naked, and completely helpless. And then they go and complete their formation into proper little animals in the pouch of their mothers. So that's the marsupials. I cannot remember the official term for platypus. I'm going to reach out in desperation. You'll all have to keep it secret from Mr. Henry, because clearly my brain isn't working this morning, and I'm not going to cheat by looking it up. You'll have to help me out there in terms of the names, the official terminology. And it is from what scientists and evolutionary biologists understand, it is a sort of more basic form of thank you very much. Thank you very much to Darth, anyway, and Michelle. That is the word I was looking for. Monotremes. Thank you very much. Monotremes is exactly the word that I was looking for. So instead of placenta mammals, we have the monotremes as well. I used to know that off the top of my head, and my mind has just been filled with too many other strange and wonderful bits of information. So our monotremes is what is the terminology. I knew what I was talking about, just not what it was referred to as. So the monotremes of Australia, bizarre place. And of course, James has now also asked why animals hop, which is a question I can't answer. Why do you think animals hop, Dave, in Australia? Dodging all the snakes and spiders and the hot ground. All the bizarre things that they have in that strange place down under. Liz has put forward a very good argument that they hop because of the extreme distances that they have to travel in order to find food and water. Unlike our lovely lioness here, Amber Eyes hasn't really moved much in the last few moments. Not that we would be in any way justified in calling her lazy. The hopping, conserving energy. Oh, big yawn. That's usually, if she starts to lick her feet as well, could be a precursor to getting up and moving. So Liz, a very good answer. Perhaps it does, in fact it may well be that it conserves energy to allow them to cover such enormous distances. I don't know, I find hopping more exhausting than walking personally, but perhaps I'm not doing it right. I haven't quite got the leg structure for it. We should all have a hopping day in honor of the National Australia Wildlife Day. While our lioness decides whether or not to hop up, we started our morning talking about zebra alarm calls and where they might go and what they might do. Let's go across to James, who has managed to find some for us.
There's absolutely nothing alarmed about these animals, everyone. They are having a very pleasant Sunday morning breakfast here, as we shall shortly be doing. Well, not that shortly, but hopefully it will be pleasant. Eggs Benedict, I believe, is the Sunday fare. Now, they are finding, astoundingly, bits and pieces to eat that they can somehow derive some nutrition from. Most of what they're eating, of course, is very dry grass. If he eats too much, it isn't very nutritious, and that's why in conditions like these, although if you are not a ruminant, you don't have a particularly efficient digestive system comparatively, it does mean that once conditions get to what they are now, with a very poor sward to eat and very dry leaves to eat, well, it doesn't actually make a difference to something like a zebra. I don't know if I've explained that correctly or not, but basically what it means is that a ruminant has a limit to the amount it can eat, and so once conditions drop below a certain level, it becomes disadvantageous to be a ruminant. A zebra has no limit to the amount that it can eat. Now, let us go on while you watch these things here. Let's chat about the hopping of the animals. And Jamie is correct to a certain extent, but the interesting thing about why it is that as Australian animals hop is apparently driven by the fact that the continent is very nutrient poor. It's why you don't have anything like the diversity of mammals and birds that you have in, say, Papua New Guinea, or up into Indonesia, or even South Africa. It's very nutrient poor, and that means that every movement that an animal makes has to be particularly efficient. In the case of the koalas, it's just to not move at all, just like a sort of teenage human being, or Gendre on leave. That's not fair. Gendre is actually quite active on leave. Some people on leave. But the other reason is it's a plyometric reason. And what I'm going to do is to demonstrate it to you. These zebras are going to take fright, so I do warn you. They are going to leave when I try and show you the hopping. Now, let's see if they get nervous. I think they probably will get a bit nervous. There is a natural elasticity. Will you tell me about my... no, they're okay. There's a natural elasticity It's interesting to watch them move now, just before I show you what I'm going to. There's a natural elasticity to movement when you hop. And much like a spring, if you toss a spring at the ground, my sound's still fine, Jandri? If you toss a spring at the ground, you know that it lands and it will compress under its own weight slightly and then bounce on. Now your muscles do exactly the same thing. And even if you do this try this at home if you'd like, not if you're going to injure yourself, please, but if you aren't going to injure yourself, you can try it. And if you take some hopping steps, can you see my feet, Jandre? They're fine. If you take some hopping steps and you hop like this, and then you stop, and then you do it again, it's not efficient. It's very inefficient. But if you do what many of the, and this is a lot to do with sprint training, so if you are a sprinter, which I very clearly am not, if you are Usain Bolt, they do a lot of these sort of what we call plyometric exercises, and when you hop and then jump straight away on landing, what it does is it uses the natural elasticity of your muscles and your joints. So if you hop like that, every time you hit the ground you jump up again. Did that look like a bunny there, Jandre? No, I'm not doing any more of those. I felt slightly embarrassed. What it means is that, and especially if you're specifically designed for it, which we are not, and certainly none of the animals out here are, but the marsupials are, it means that much of the motion is actually not, it doesn't use energy at all. It comes from the natural elasticity of the muscles and the joints. So that's why, everybody, in a nutrient-poor continent like Australia, everything likes to hop. X-Ranger, who is in Tasmania, you say we need to have a kangaroo impression competition now. I think I've done my kangaroo impression actually, so let's try and see if we can get Jamie to do it. I imagine she will be a very elegant kangaroo indeed. And thank you for working out. You know, the reason I asked the other question of Jamie is that I can never remember the word monotreme. Thank you very much for helping out with that. Monotreme. Never remember it. Right, let's move on. I'm not sure where we're going to go. I think we'll probably head down towards Treehouse Dam, see what's going on there. Maybe Kurula, Hosana and Shongile have come back across after Tingana, that beastly, ignoble fellow, stole their meal the other day, along with his consort, Shadow, the tragic figure. We'll go up to the Balanites tree, the last bit of greenery here. And it's interesting, you know, I'm obviously getting into me photos at the moment, and so there's a bit of editing of photos that happens. And if you take the color palette on a photograph that you take at this time of the year, and even if you sort of look through an area like that, there's almost no green at all. And even if you take a picture of a tree like this, blowing the yellow color on the picture will pull out the color of a tree like this, but there's very little actual green pigment left in any of the scenery around here. And that will change, of course, as we go towards the summertime, but that's what it is now. So lots of yellows and browns and oranges and a little bit of red, very little blue, other than in the sky, of course. And that's going to be an interesting change as we go towards the summer. Hello Bear in Ontario. I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with you. You say it's sad to see the barren landscape and there's nothing to eat for the animals. The animals are doing absolutely fine. There's nothing out here other than the elephants that's looking particularly skinny and in a bad way. What we perceive as a barren landscape, Bear, is actually not. There's plenty to eat if you know where to look for it, and if you happen to, you know, like the things that are growing out here. I think in a month or two's time it might be a little more sad, but I don't find it sad at the moment, especially as we can see so nicely, and also as we expect the spring and the greenness to come later on this year. So yeah, I mean, I can see why. I've said this to you before a few times. This can look like a tremendously harsh and unpleasant landscape if you're not used to it. But once you're in it and once you're used to it, it really is, it's quite wondrous to watch it change, and it's nice to have it like this every so often. There is a crowned lapwing, which I suspect has got a nesty around here. Let's just go back and have a look. There are two of them on the ground, three of them on the ground there, Gendre. Our cup runneth over again. Can you see them? There we are. The crowned lapwing. They always look very irritated, I feel, and they make those loud squawking noises when they're alarmed. And we were asked a little while back, have I ever been dive bombed by a bird? Well, these chaps are very good dive bombers. And it's amazing how terrifying a bird, even though it's not a particularly big bird, how absolutely terrifying a bird flying out of the sky at your head is, even though you know that if you stand still it more than likely won't actually hit you. Have you ever been dive bombed by a lapwing, Gendre? Have you been hit by one? You see. I'm sure you weren't terrified like me, because you're very brave, but a lovely story from a chap who was doing research on something called a bishop bird. And the bishop bird is a tiny little finch-like weaver, a weaver-like bird, and this chap was doing research on them, and they like to sort of nest over water. And what he did was he got into the water in a sort of pair of waders, and he had his clipboard and he was making zoological observations of some sort, and this male bishop bird took exception to him. And he said he looked up and this thing was skimming across the surface of the water straight at his head, and he threw everything. He got such a fright that he tossed his clipboard, his camera, his binoculars, his hat, and everything went into the water around him, because he was terrified by the sight of this bird that big flying towards him. And I think there are many of us that can sympathize with that. A question from Anna. Anna is, wait, I'm going to get it, Kirsten. I will remember what Anna asked. No, I won't. Kirsten, what did Anna ask? Oh, yes, here we go. There we go. You want to know if there's ever been a bird, if I've ever seen a bird that has albinism? No, I haven't. I have seen many birds that exhibit what we call leucism, which is a sort of not quite the absence of melanin, but it is a reduction in melanin. And I'm sure you've seen them too. The feral pigeon, for example, is very commonly leucistic. You find red forms, black forms, and those white forms. The pale, very pale form. That pale form Wahlberg's eagle is leucistic. I've seen leucistic franklins as well. I've never seen one completely devoid of pigment though, and that is the that's the descriptor for albinism. So an albino has got no pigment in it at all. And I've never seen that in a bird. I don't know if it occurs. We'd lovely to find out if anybody has ever seen an albino bird versus just a leucistic bird. Hashtag Safari Live questions at WildEarthTV if you'd like to tell us. So I'll have to think of another question for Pajamas Patterson. Ooh, there'd be a wee raptor sitting on this tree over here. And I wonder, were you with Jamie yesterday morning, Johnbury? Is this where they were building a nest? No. Did you see the raptor? Let's see if it is the shikra, which is what was building the nest. I'm going to try and get around the front of it, Johnbury. Except then you're going to be staring into the light, aren't you? It's very bright today, everybody. Say when? Sure. Well, we won't see its face. Try now, and then I will go back for you. Shut up. It is a shikra. I'll tell you how I can tell that. Are you in as far as you can get, John? Because we won't see it from any other angle. Yeah. Now, just watch carefully as Jean complains bitterly and moans like a stuck pig. What they do have is a yellow bill and bright, not bright, sort of dark red wine coloured eyes. And that one does have that. I saw it with my binoculars. There you go. You can see the yellow bill, the yellow cere. But I do see why Jean is complaining. It's not the best picture in the world.
Not as good as one of your photographs.
Shut up. Cameraman gets above himself. It's very distressing, everybody. Shiraz coloured eyes. That's a really nice shot now. Let's see where he climbs now. So that's a descriptor. These little goshawks of the Accipiters. Look, he's breaking sticks. We must be close to where he was building, surely. John, are we not? He's being silent now, everybody. I don't think he remembers where they were yesterday. Watch him. Watch him. He's up in that tree. I think that's where their nest is. There's the nest. Ha! Is that the same tree, Jean-Andre? Because I'll be so astounded if there are two shikra nests on Zoe's road. This is brilliant. That's fantastic, everybody. And Jean-Andre does say now that it is the same one.
Okay. Jean-Andre realizes he wasn't with Jamie.
Jean-Andre has just realized that he wasn't with Jamie yesterday. There's not a huge amount you can do about that kind of, gormlessness. I'd love to blame Jean-Andre, but I have to say I can't remember one game drive to the next which cameraman I've been with either.
You weren't memorable.
About as memorable as we are, apparently. Now, can you hear just listen? I don't know if you heard that, but the dwarf mongoose went crazy as the bird took off. And also some white-crested helmet shrikes over there, which we're not going to try and show you because they're a long way away. it's going to be fascinating watching that nest during the course of the year for the little ones. James Richard, you want to know how many eggies a shikra lays? No idea. I'm going to guess at 2, and then I'm going to check for you. S for shikra. No, let's go for goshawk, because that's where we'll find them. No, no, yes, yes, yes. Double click. Breeding, monogamous, small platform nest lined with bark chips built in upper branches of tree. Yes, we got that. Here we go. You shouldn't ever drive and be on your phone, everybody. Just understand that. Don't follow my example. Do as I say, not as I do. Nest eggies. 1 to 4, usually 2 or 3. There we go. Sometimes, and that's once a year they lay them, and sometimes if there's a complete failure for hatching, they might try again, but normally not. 1 to 4 eggies. Little ones. Alright, let's go across to Jamie, get an update from her, find out what's going on with the lions, and we'll investigate whether the queen has come home or not.
And on our lion investigation, well, Amber Eyes has given us the slip. She seems to be on a one lioness hunting mission this morning. That, or she's trying to find that male again. I can't quite figure out exactly what it is she's up to. She was heading into this direction. She went through some really...
Yes. And again, here we are. Hello everybody, I'm not sure what happened there, a couple of technical glitches. Yet again, I remain deeply relieved that I didn't say anything nasty to Gendre. Well, nothing nasty or out of the ordinary, or not extraordinarily nasty. We haven't found anything else since you last saw us 25 seconds ago. Now, let's head across here. And we'll see if any tracks come by. Gendre, when are our new microphone cables coming? Ah, they should be in customs on Monday or Tuesday, which means they'll arrive in the year 2025. It's a pity. Now, James Bear, I think it was James Bear, you said that you find this quite barren to look at, and yes, we drive through here, and that, I suppose it does look a little bit barren. But it does have a charm. Sorry, Bear in Ontario, not James Bear. Thank you, Bear in Ontario. Alright, Kirsten, I'm ready for the next one. Go ahead, go on. Ah, it's interesting. Wildlife Warrior, you pointed out that it's 10 years since Steve Irwin, appropriately Australian, died. He was stabbed by a stingray, if I'm not mistaken, which can't be a nice way to go. And Wildlife Warrior, you say on the anniversary of his demise, are there any sort of wildlife heroes that I look up to? Are you looking at the wildebeest, are you? Let me get you into a position where you can see the wildebeest nicely, Gendre. That's hopeless, isn't it? It's not too bad. It's not great. We'll just sit here and see if he moves rather than start the engine. Wildlife Warrior, I think the obvious one for me, and I feel almost sort of cliched in saying it, but the chap I look up to as from the job that I do now, of course, would be old David Attenborough. And that's because he has such a vast breadth of knowledge. There is such a tremendous authenticity to what he does. He has made an enormous contribution through his wildlife performances, or his performances in wildlife, to conservation. So he would be the obvious one. I suppose it's so obvious it almost doesn't bear talking about. Perhaps someone less obvious to some around the world, Ian Player of South Africa, who recently died, and you will definitely know his slightly more famous brother, Gary Player, the golfer. Ian made a massive contribution to rhino conservation, and also to the setting up of what we call the Wilderness Leadership School. And the Wilderness Leadership School is all about getting people into the wild. And it is, while not a spiritual movement, there's definitely an element of it that is about the spiritual nature of the wilderness and our reconnection with it, and therefore conscious living. And so there's a lot I admire about his philosophies and what he contributed to conservation. There it is over there again, Jandre. You hear about them, you read about them, you see it on TV, but when you actually see the ceaseless lines of these things moving towards the rivers and the grazing lands, nobody stops for wildebeest there unless they're sort of a pack or a herd of at least 1,000 or 2,000. Nobody even bothers to look. Here we sit with our blue gnu on his own and marvel, because he is quite a rare sight here. He's not too far from a herd of impala, which is the other side of the road. They've kind of moved off into the woodland, but he will be hanging around with them for security, because he don't have 1,000 friends to help him. He's just noticed Jandre, because he's very startled by what he's observed. He's listening, smelling. Hello, David. What a very good question. I hadn't thought about this until you said it. You said, where have all the nyala and kudu gone? I know exactly what you mean, because I don't feel like we've seen some of them for a little while, but I think it's chance. I think it's where we've been driving. So we did see a very large herd of nyala yesterday as I was driving round about where Jamie is now. They were around there. I had a nice kudu sighting on Cheetah Plains yesterday, but unfortunately we didn't have any signal. So they're around. I think we've just been kind of on these ridgecrest areas now, where they're more likely, especially as we get into the real business end of the dry season, they're much more likely to head down towards the rivers. Now I'm still trying to think of a third shy and wildlife question for... oh, here's a nice one. I mean, I'm pretty sure Jamie will get this one. Why are there so many flightless birds in New Zealand? Why does New Zealand have so many flightless birds? There we are. Because we're assuming it's Wildlife Day there too. Alright, let's go across to Jamie and get the answer from her. Hopefully she will have signal sufficient.
While we think about why there are so many flightless birds in New Zealand and whether or not James reads instructions on quizzes, I have a question for James in return. I hear you were talking about pale bird species, and that's actually on a completely unrelated note. There was a connection in my head, but it actually doesn't make sense when I say it out loud. What is the most endangered antelope of Africa? And what is the most endangered species of antelope that you could find if you were traversing the African continent? I need to think about flightless birds in New Zealand as we race along Hyena Road, because Bernie's just called in that he has located the Nkuhumas and their gorgeous little cubs, but he's called us and said please hurry because he can't keep up with them off-road. Of course, we've got excuse me, we've got the little cars, which makes life much easier. Our cars are about, oh, bumpy, sorry Dave. Second time we've driven along Hyena Road. It seems to be my standard approach over the last few days, as I drive past somewhere and then somebody else finds the animals exactly where I've just been. But let us race along and go and catch up with the Nkuhumas quickly before they disappear. Amber Eyes is probably on her way back here. It's difficult to know, make that assumption. I've gone quiet for a second because I'm thinking. And Sharon's asked a question. I'm just trying to think of the answer. So the question is, which is the oldest of the big cats in this area? The oldest that we encounter would be a toss-up. I know that there is much debate as to Mbula's age and whether or not he is 13 or 11, depending upon which source you asked. He would be one of them. Karula's definitely one of them at 12 years old. The oldest of the Nkuhuma lionesses is probably quite old as well, but I don't think she's not near her teens just yet. If I had to guess, I'd put her somewhere around maybe 10 or so years old. So those are some of the oldest of the big cats. The Birmingham boys are still young guns in terms of ages. They're just over 5 years old. I know that there was a leopard that was reported in Londolozi. I can't remember what her name was now. It will come back to me. She was 18. She was born in 1998, and they spotted her around the lodge a couple of months ago. She hasn't been seen since, so there is a chance that she has since died. The waterbuck looking curiously in this direction, but I don't think they're looking at lions. I think the lions are a bit further up. I'm not going to stop for them. Oh, little one is a tiny little waterbuck. Tiny-ish little waterbuck. I'm not going to stop for too long and just have a quick glimpse at them, and then we'll continue onwards. They're nervous. I think they know that the lions have been in the area. Okay, let's hurry along, just so that we don't run the risk of losing out on a chance to see the Nkuhuma cubs. Now, I know that a lot of you out there keep a very firm track of the different big cats of the Sabi Sands, and perhaps you know which animal is the oldest of the ones that we keep track of. There, all the little lion cubs. Oh, baboon. One sprinting baboon. That was a surprise. You don't often see baboons. Where did they go? They're all racing. Oh, there's one. There's a huge one over there. You can see they're very, very skittish. This one's okay. It's a bit more relaxed. Hey, awesome. Not often that we get to see a baboon troop in this particular area.
All stations in Ghana are coming out just west of Buffelshoek Dam.
Oh, lions everywhere. Sally's just called in that there's lions going to Buffelshoek Dam. But we do have a lovely view of an animal, or we had a lovely view of an animal that we don't often get to see.
Can I come and join you?
It has disappeared. I want to keep going, I'm sorry. And just catch up with the Nkuhuma cubs. Well, we catch up with our Nkuhumas. Let's see if I can catch up in terms of James's quiz. I still have to think of the third question, I think. However, we'll go across to him with one antelope and see if he can tell us what the most endangered antelope of Africa is.
Now there is a waterbuck, inescapably not the most endangered antelope of Africa. Very magnificent fellow who's been standing posing. You see, we said to him, you can be on live TV if you stand still there for a little while. And he said, oh, okay, let me just brush my hair. And you can see it's brushed to a fine sheen. And now he is standing posing magnificently, regally. The rarest antelope in Africa is, I don't know. Actually, that's a really nice question. I'm going to give a few options and see if any of them are correct. I'd say the bongo must be pretty close to being the rarest antelope in Africa. I'd say maybe a Barbary sheep, and perhaps something like a scimitar-horned oryx. But those would be the sort of three guesses I had. I'm 90% sure I'm wrong. It could be something as obscure as a zebra duiker, or one of those funny little duikers that they find in the forests, but it's quite possibly a forest antelope. So those are going to be my guesses. I couldn't tell you. If you asked me to give you one particular answer, I'd say a bongo, but that's just a wild guess. A bongo, of course, if none of you know, or if anybody doesn't know, they are related very closely to the bushbuck, the kudu, and the nyala. And I'll show you a picture of one once this fellow has stopped posing for us. I mean, we were talking there, Bear in Ontario, not James Bear, although James Bear, I hope you are watching. We were talking about the condition of the animals. His hips are sticking out slightly, I suppose, but he's in very good nick. His coat is very shiny and healthy. Kirsten has given me a clue, or what she considers a clue, to my antelope quiz. She says it is not a bongo. That's not really a clue so much as telling me I'm wrong, Kirsten. In fact, that might be the worst clue I've ever had. There is a bongo. They're rather spectacular fellows. There he is. Found in the Central African rainforests. And I was just talking about some of those funny duikers. It might be one of these funny little duikers. Look at the zebra duiker. I mean, imagine seeing that. It'd be amazing. He's only found in West Africa. There's something called Adder's duiker, which seems to be found only in a beach. Another clue from Kirsten, it's not one of these. I don't know what it is then. I give up. Maybe it's a silver dik-dik. Or a dip tag, or a Nile lechwe. No. Barbary sheep? Is it not a Barbary sheep? There are quite a few different kinds of Barbary sheep. There's a Barbary sheep, everybody. What about a Nubian ibex? Could it be a Nubian ibex? There's a Nubian ibex. Ah, it's a Walia ibex, isn't it? It's definitely a Walia ibex. It's not an Walia ibex either. I don't know what it is then. Maybe it's an impala. This better be a good answer, Kirsten, and better not be some obscure subspecies of a much more common species, because that will be classed in the same level of question as the cheetah question, which went from the Mara Triangle to including two. Oh, a proper clue, it lives in the Sahara Desert. One is tempted to say camel, but it can't be the camel. Must be an oryx of some sort then. I'm looking forward to hearing the answer to this. This is a really good question. I don't know what it was. But you could always give me a clue, everyone. You could just tell me. So anybody who knows, send through a very special message. And, well, Kirsten will have to relay it to me, of course, unless I turn my phone on, in which case you could just tweet it to me privately. Maybe I should do that. Except now I've told everyone I'm going to do it, so that would be cheating. No sign so far of any leopard in this particular region. We'll do a turn past the southern end of this dam. I'm really looking forward to when this dam's got some water in it, and I'm hoping that the weavers will return. The village weavers onto their black monkey thorn tree, which is just the other side of the dam wall here. Take the high road or the low road, Genre? The low road. Can you actually drive on that road? You can, yes. We're taking the low road, everybody. Sarah in Florida, good question from you. You want to know about what the most endangered animal we get here is. I would say probably the wild dog. It's certainly the most endangered mammal that we get here. And so I'm going to go with the wild dog. But you may well find that things like there might be the odd bat species that we don't find very commonly, but we just don't know enough about them. They could be very, very rare indeed, but it's most likely to be the wild dog. No, well, Genre is saying pangolin. Now, there's a big difference between an animal that is endangered versus uncommon, and I think you'll find something like a pangolin is it's actually relatively common in the Sabi Sands. We just don't see them because they're nocturnal. But you find their evidence fairly regularly, and so I wouldn't say they're endangered so much as uncommon. Now, this is a favourite haunt of the Queen and her two prince and princess, but not normally when there's an impala looking about the place. Let's have a look at him. One should always stop for an impala once a day, Chandra at least. And here is ours. Hello. Why are you going behind the bushes? James Richard, a nice one from you. You say Nelson Impala is perhaps a one of the rarest antelope that we get in Africa because he is actually practically a unicorn. Yes, that's a very good point. Oh, there's a woodpecker on the tree just up ahead. I'm going to try and find it, Jandri. Let's go a little bit forward. I can hear it tick, 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 tick. Now, many of you will have seen the cardinal. Many of you will have seen... Did you hear that? I think it's here. They don't have a nest here. Let's just switch off and listen. So you would have seen the cardinal, you would have seen the bearded, possibly the golden-tailed, and very few would have seen the bennets. But Bennett's woodpecker, of course, wouldn't be tapping there. They live on the ground largely. No, I can't see it, everyone, I'm afraid. Maybe it was tapping from inside this bush. But not Genre. Genre is looking deeply distressed at my incompetence right now. I'd have to drive him through a Sisyphus bush just to knock him down a peg. No. No woodpecker. Let's go and find out from Jamie what the actual rarest antelope in Africa is.
The actual rarest antelope is something we're going to discuss in one moment, but first we are desperately scanning the bush for the nkuhumas and their little cubs. Listen for a second. The baboons are alarm calling from where we saw them last, so it might be that the lions are doing circles around us. Bernie had them heading in this direction. I can hear something rustling off in the distance, but I don't know if it's an elephant maybe. There are ellies around, there are lots and lots of tracks of them. And we find ourselves sitting in the middle of the bush, just waiting. Oh, that's bright. Just waiting to see whether or not the nkuhumas pop out. Some of them have come towards Buffelshoek Dam, so there really are elephants everywhere. Lions everywhere. I know. Yeah, they're there. Benny, I'm going to go in the direction of those baboon alarm calls.
Jamie, they've been calling a while, but intuitively it didn't feel like they were going to head that direction. They were just walking slowly towards the ridge, and I kind of got the feeling there were two age groups of cubs with the two female.
Okay, copy, thank you. Bernie said they were heading in this
The
direction. It
bomber
might just
be
be
calling,
the constant
I might have
response.
seen the other lions carrying this one.
Copy, thank you. So apparently those baboons have been alarm calling for a considerable period of time. So what sometimes happens is the animals when animals like baboons spot lions, they continue to alarm call for a considerable period of time afterwards, which may well be what they were doing since the lions were heading in this direction. We're between Hyena Road and the Gari Cutline drainage system, for those of you who are more familiar with the geography. There's a nest in that tree.
Hey, mate.
And we're running out of time. We need to try and track down these lions. Go up a little bit to the left there, Dave. There. Yes, there we go. Perfect. There's a nest. A bird's nest. And that could well have been something like a shrike or a waxbill somewhere around here. Perhaps we'll return at the start of spring to finish up building that nest. It's a cup-shaped nest, and as you know, the different birds build different shaped nests. So that could well be something like a waxbill, or even a fork-tailed drongo builds a nest that looks something similar to that. Another bird's nest, since you were looking at the shikra nest with James, to keep an eye on. So we only have half an hour left to think of our third and final question for James. The answer to the antelope question is in fact an addax antelope, also known as a white antelope or a screwhorn antelope. And I tried to find a picture, but my thing won't load to get it up for you. My phone won't load up the picture, but for those of you who have Google, and you must do because you're busy watching on the internet, you'll be able to look up exactly what they look like. They are the most extraordinary looking antelope. The only remaining sort of proper population or wild living population is in Niger, or Niger, depending on how you pronounce it, up sort of towards the northern part of Africa. And they look like a combination between a kudu and maybe an oryx would be a good sort of combination of different antelopes. So they've got the spiraling horns of the kudu, and then they've got this incredible white color that matches up, especially because they're Sahara dwelling, or they used to be naturally Sahara dwelling antelope. They've got a very light fur color to bounce back the sun and make sure that they don't overheat or lose too much water. I'm sorry, I'm looking back into you, but I'm basically blinding myself. I need to be the pale color of a screwhorn or an addax antelope. Come on, lions. Come on. You're leading us on a merry dance this whole morning. Lions everywhere, and I know I promised to do a kangaroo hop, which I'm going to do when there's less lions around, I promise. I will do a kangaroo hop. And of course now apparently I'm now, I think, 0 for, well, I kind of got the monotremes one, I just couldn't remember the name off the top of my head, and I was trying to find a lion at the time. But I think I'm now 0 for 3 in terms of James's questions, because I haven't answered why it is that there are so many flightless birds in New Zealand. I'm guessing that it's because there's not that many big predators for them, in terms of, because I mean New Zealand has a very, very limited number of predator species, apart from human beings, of course. The flight necessity, in terms of a defense, may well have become something that is no longer necessary for a great deal of the birds there, because there's no major terrestrial bird predators. That's an answer I'm putting forward, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So again, putting it to the viewers, Mr. Hendry's been asking some nasty ones. And apparently Deborah, our armchair traveller, agrees with me on that answer. So Deborah, at least you and I are on the same page. James and myself have been asking some nasty questions this morning. And our lions have been escaping us. Here's the baboon. There is a baboon walking through the trees. That's wonderful. They're coming in our direction. Let's just wait here, since we don't often get to look at baboons. Also, oh, look at the one riding on the back. It's going to pop out in the open there. There's a little one riding on Mom's back, piggyback style. It's going to be very difficult for Dave to show you. They are skittish. Got one there. There it is. Look, lying flat. Perfect. Well done, Dave. Clinging onto Mommy's back. How awesome is that? So in the initial first few weeks of their lives, their moms have to carry them up against their chest, which basically means that they have to run along on 3 limbs instead of 4. But then when they get to a couple of weeks old, they're strong enough to clamber onto Mom's back, just like this one's doing, and cling on. And here's an interesting explanation behind why a baboon's tail is shaped the way that it is. Now, it's not really a confirmed theory, but it's one that I really like. We've been asked before, why is it that baboons' tails are this bizarre shape? They don't seem to serve much of a useful purpose, do they? That very strange sort of upwards and then downwards shape. But apparently, one of the explanations is that it's really useful for a little baboon to lean against the tail of the adult, of the mom. So it's like a backrest, rather than having to either cling on forwards or hold its back upright. Those of you who've been horse riding for long periods of time, you know that eventually it gets exhausting holding your back upright like that. Come, let's go catch up with them. I love baboons, and we hardly ever get to see them. I think we'll be able to catch them on the fire break. You just watch carefully where they're going, try and get the line. If they're going to pop out on the fire break. Awesome! I love baboons. Wonderful to see that little one lying like it is. So, while we catch up with them for the quiz today, I've done exceptionally poorly, but it's okay because Janice, I don't think has been able to answer my questions as too much either. So my final question for Mr. Henry is one that should be, I think, right up his alley. And since we're discarding rules left, right and centre, I don't feel too guilty about the fact. I don't want to scare these baboons. I also want to get out of here, but I can't find my way out. Where have they gone? So I'm going to discard the rule. We're no longer talking about necessarily critically endangered creatures, although this particular one is totally endemic to one tiny area. And I would like to know from James, and I think he'll get this one, he should, I chose it specifically for him, where the only place in South Africa is that you will find a red squirrel. So we've got tree squirrels, we've got ground squirrels, but there is another little squirrel species. It is a red squirrel, and it occurs in one part of South Africa only. Goodness. Sorry, Dave, bouncing you around in the back. It's a tricky spot here. I'm trying to get out. While we negotiate our way out and try and catch up with these baboons, and hopefully the lions at some point as well, let's go across to James, who has got something much, much larger.
Yes, elephants, everybody. Here they are. Not all of them, just some. A small herd of elephants, and while we observe them, I shall address the questions Jamie has asked of me. The first being, where would one find a red squirrel? My answer, I think if it's correct, is in the sand forest. And sand forest you would find up, well, in the northern parts of Natal, or KwaZulu-Natal. And there are sand forests there, and I think you might find some of them in the coastal bush there. Here comes this elephant now to say hello to us. Or peel Gendre off the back of the car and toss him to the ground.
I would like that.
Well, I'm happy with either approach, really. We'll see what happens. But she looks not large enough or angry enough to do any serious damage. This is lovely. I love it when they approach us. So that's my answer to the red squirrel. Then, I just would like to add a little bit to the flightlessness of New Zealand's birds and ask a follow-up question, not so much to Jamie, but perhaps to the residents of New Zealand. As far as I'm aware, there are no endemic mammals at all. Far from there being just no predators, I think there are almost no endemic mammals to New Zealand at all, because it's an island, of course. And I'd like someone from New Zealand to tell me if that is correct or not. And then to make special mention of one of the birds that got me interested in writing, and that was the kakapo parrot. And the kakapo parrot is a ground-dwelling parrot, the plight of which is so beautifully and utterly hilariously described by Douglas Adams in his book Last Chance to See. If you want to laugh and you want to learn about a few endangered species, go and read Last Chance to See by Douglas Adams. John, I know you're trying to get me to look at the camera, but there's, I think, an unusual flycatcher in this tree up ahead here. And I'm just, can you see it? It's you're unsighted, I think. It's in the second tree behind there on top.
Hopping.
Let's just have a look there. It's a fan-tailed flycatcher, everybody. Now I think called an ashy grey.
Yeah.
Apparently the red squirrel is not found in the sand forest. I think you're talking nonsense. So I think you're talking, Kirsten. Let's just quickly have a look at the ashy grey flycatcher, because I wonder if it isn't a new one for some of you. I suppose it could be in the Ungoya forests, the Ungoya red squirrel. Maybe that's the only one that you find there. I'm correct, it is in the Ungoya forest, and I should know that, of course. But I suppose parts of the Ungoya forest could be considered sand forest. I'm just going to find you this flycatcher, everybody, while Gendre unkindly puts the camera on me. Right, there it is. It's actually called a grey tit flycatcher. There it is. And you can see it's got a fanned tail. And I think that's what we were looking at there. So please tell me if that's a new one for any of you. It's certainly a relative. I mean, I hear them all the time. They make the lovely call. Tree, 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 tree. Try that, Chandra. Rather than your normal singing. Yes, you see. No, not very good. Tree, tree. There we are. Well done. So the Ungoya forest is actually a fascinating forest. I did my honours research there, but on the Zulu people around the Ungoya forest. I didn't actually go into the forest too much. There's also a special bird there called the Woodward's barbet, which is found nowhere else. Hello, little elephant. Ah, there we go. Thank you very much, Aaron in New Zealand. You say that bats are the only endemic mammals to New Zealand. Well, that's not surprising. Of course, they got there the same way the birds did, Gendre. Swimming. No. Flying, obviously. So this little elephant, just trying to look slightly intimidating to us, making sure that we don't take any chances with him or his family, assessing whether he is actually as terrifying as his mother's told him he is. And as I say, and I say it often and I'll keep saying it, to be complacent around elephants is a great danger. We spend so much time in such close proximity with them here that you've got to keep watching their behavior. You can never take it for granted that they're just going to be happy with your presence. Because they are, of course, the one animal out here that if they do take exception to you, if you do irritate them in some way, they are the ones that can actually do damage. She's showing no signs of discomfort at all, though. Right, Jamie is still knocking about with the lions. That's very interesting. She seems to have found them again, or be in a position to find them. So let's go and find out from her what's happening there.
We finally found the lions. In this case, 2 females and 1 male slowly walking behind them. And they are sniffing about trying to find the rest of the pride, and hopefully if we stick with them they will lead us straight to them. The temperatures are starting to go up on this bright and brilliant spring morning, and when we've been stretching our brain muscles with all the quizzes that we've been testing each other on, and the lions have been quizzing me as well this morning. I've been splitting my brain into 50 different directions. But at least we have been successful for the last few moments of the sunrise safari. So hello, boy. Our lovely male lion. This morning's been a lion-filled morning. You can see in their body language, the male's not really too bothered. He's just following the females. The females, on the other hand, are bothered, and they are most definitely on the lookout for the cubs and the rest of the pride and their sisterhood. I'm not sure which lionesses we have here. I think most likely one of them will be the young female, since there's no suckle marks here. As they slowly wander along, we've got 3 Nkuhumas that have cubs and 2 without, so 2 that are busy mating with males. And Courtney's asked a very salient question that, Courtney, to tell you the truth, scientists have been pondering for a considerable period of time, and that is whether or not lionesses can be impregnated, and actually female leopards as well, by multiple males. Now, can the same litter of cubs have different fathers? And the answer is we don't know, but it's something that is being investigated by genetic scientists, and we'll probably have our answers in the not too distant future. We've often wondered at the differences of leopard cubs within the same litter, and whether or not they might have different fathers. And certainly it is the case that the lionesses are not choosy about which males they mate with. We do know that in certain areas up to 50% of the cubs are not those offspring of the dominant males of those areas. Basically means that the dominant males are being tricked by canny lionesses that mate with them, and then also with any strangers that happen to wander into their midst. Hey boy, he's going to stay here. We're going to follow the lionesses because I think they're going to lead us to the cubs. But it is going to get tricky in here, so everybody buckle up and hold on tight. Dave, prepare yourself. And of course, Dave is an absolute legend at dodging branches. And these lionesses are leading us into a place straight back to where they were yesterday, where I said we couldn't get a vehicle in. But I'm now so determined, having spent the morning just narrowly missing them, I'm now determined that we're going to stick with them until the end of the sunrise safari. In theory, if we can get through here, we can. Of course we can. Watch out, Dave.
Yep.
Really good. I know where they're going. They're going straight into the drainage line around Gowrie Cut Line. That's going to be a tricky situation. So while we trundle along, let us go back across to James and see how he feels about this morning's quiz.
I'm not sure. I've considered how I feel about this morning's quiz. I'm not sure to excuse me. I don't I don't know that this morning's quiz elicited an enormous emotional response in me, but it certainly it was very interesting. The questions from Jamie's side certainly improved from the first one, which was deeply confusing, and the answer was even more confusing than the question. Anyway, after that they got really good. So I'm very pleased to now know that the addax, did you see a picture of an addax? I can show you a picture of one if you haven't seen it. But the addax, the rarest antelope in Africa. Ah, you didn't have a picture of an addax. Well, let me show it to you then, because I didn't know what it looked like. I actually, when I said scimitar-horned oryx, this is what I thought it was, but it wasn't the scimitar-horned oryx that I was thinking of. The addax. There they are. That's them there, Randre, at the bottom, with those sort of spirally corkscrewy type horns. He's quite a splendid fellow, really. There's the scimitar-horned oryx, by the way. That's the one I mentioned. Very nice. The addax. Oh, and would you like to see a red squirrel? While we're waiting for the question from Mobile Paddy. Ooh. Mobile Paddy, you want to know where I would create a national park and why I would create it there? What a good question. I don't know. Where in Africa would I create a national park if there were? There isn't one. Right, the red squirrel. Hang on a second. I saw a red squirrel. It's not that red one, Kirsten, shut up. It might be that red one. South African ground squirrel. It might be a subspecies of this red squirrel. It doesn't say it occurs down here though. It's not that one, no. There is a red squirrel. I can't even find the red squirrel here. It's not surprising if it's only found in the Ngoya forest. Well, that wouldn't be surprising. Yeah, it's not actually even in this book, which is very strange because all things are normally in this book. No, I don't believe it to be here. Oh well, and I'm glad we don't have that here. Aren't you glad we don't have that thing? That thing is called a sand puppy or naked mole rat.
Beautiful.
I'm very pleased not to be showing that to you on Game Drive. Blech. No lips, you see. Horrible genre, horrible looking thing. Mobile Paddy, where would I put a game reserve if I had a chance to create one somewhere in Africa? I suppose, not that I'd want to visit there too often because of the insects and things, but I think the more national park that we could get into the forests of Central Africa, into the Congo Basin and that sort of thing, I think that would be tremendously important. There are huge seats of endemic animals and biodiversity, and very little of those areas are protected. Lots of those forested areas are completely denuded of birds and mammals because people have, mainly due to civil war, turned to those areas for the bushmeat trade. So I think the more of those areas that were created as national parks, the better it would be for conservation. I mean, I'd love to create a couple of national parks around South Africa and various spots that I quite like, but I think that we here in South Africa actually have most of the areas that hold our biodiversity quite well covered. So it would be in Central Africa, in the Congo Basin. Nice question, thank you, Mobile Paddy. Just watching these in Impala, we've been talking about the drought and how dreadful it is, and just considering on the basis of Bear and Ontario's question whether or not the animals are suffering. They look fine. It's amazing to me. I really thought we were going to be inundated with starving beggars at the doorstep, as it were, but it hasn't happened yet. We could be a good month off some rain though, so let's see. Might be even more than that. I would like just one bit of rain before the real rain. Okay everyone, that's going to be it from us this morning. Thank you, Jean, for your efforts. Well done. We hope that you will continue with those into the afternoon. We will see you this afternoon. There will be a fireside chat as far as I'm concerned. I think Jean is looking very confused. I think there will be. Kirsten, is there a fireside chat? Affirmative, there will be a fireside chat. Good. Okay, that will be at 5:45. Until then, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Sure, you're all as excited as these lionesses are about the fireside chat. Look at them. They can barely contain their joy. Or at least they can barely contain their joy about the fact that they have managed to find themselves some shade for now. And the temperatures have skyrocketed. It's already getting close to 30 degrees centigrade, so 86 Fahrenheit, and summer is very much on its way. Excuse me. And unfortunately, what that means is that the lionesses were just a little bit too tired and hot and uncomfortable to continue their search for the rest of the pride. I have absolutely no doubt that we are not far from them as we speak. I've been sitting here listening carefully for the little squawking sounds of the cubs. You know how noisy our Nkahuma cubs truly are with their meow, meow, constant niggling for attention, which will also help these lionesses track them down and find them. But it gives us a really, really good place to start for the afternoon sunset safari, which is exactly what we were aiming for. At least we've got a rough idea as to where they're going to be. For now, our lionesses have contented themselves with settling down and enjoying a little bit of a rest. And of course, accompanied by the gentleman that was wandering along behind them. And Mobile Paddy, to answer your question that James has already answered, Mobile Paddy's question was about if we could establish a protected area, where would we do it and why? I'm stumped. I think that the central rainforests or the central forests of Africa would be an amazing place to do it. Mobile Paddy, I would love to see more of the Ethiopian and Nile areas preserved as well, just in terms of, I don't know why I've got such a fascination with that particular part of the world at the moment. I've got some kind of wanderlust that I want to go there. And I know that there are reserves there, but it would be wonderful if they could be expanded even more to help out endangered species like the Ethiopian wolf, or the red wolf as they are, or simian wolf, depending on what different names they are called by. I think that somewhere around the Nile, the Blue Nile, the source of the Nile, those sorts of places, I don't know, there's such fascinating human and animal wildlife stuff happening there that would be one of the choices that I would make. But that's a difficult one. There are just so many vast places that need protection, and that it would be wonderful to establish protection of. Like, we're very fortunate in South Africa in that we've got a very strong conservation tradition, and animals like these gorgeous lions in front of us have got safe and protected places to be. But there are also plenty of spots in South Africa all along the coastline that I often drive through and think, oh, if only we could protect these beautiful wetlands and estuaries, lagoons. I don't know. If money is no object, I would find it very hard to know exactly where to stop. But it's a very good question, and Mobile Paddy, it's something that I might actually give a bit more thought to in terms of where I would establish a protected area. You almost want to scoop up the whole of the world and put it into some kind of safe glass box where it can be protected. Unfortunately, not quite a realistic goal. The lionesses have no such concerns. They're quite happy with just the fact that they found a nice, comfortable, open patch of ground, little bit of shade. They've got full bellies still from that buffalo kill that they were finishing off not far from here. I think that there's a very good chance that at the start of the sunset safari we'll be able to spend a little bit more time with these magnificent animals. And don't forget, of course, that Tristan will be here, and I'm sure you'll all be warm and welcoming to him. So a big thank you to Dave as we reach the end of our sunrise safari. And well done for staying on the back, Dave, and keep keeping an eye out for those flying branches, and of course fantastic camera work, as well as to Kirsty and to Jerry in a final control. And most importantly, thank you to all of us. Oh, and thank you to Mr. Henry, actually, for his enchanting questions this morning on our sunrise safari. Most importantly, a big thank you to all of you for your help, first of all, with the quiz and with everything else. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you for the sunset safari.